And hello everyone, welcome to this week's video tutorial. This will be the second installment in the series of video tutorials introducing the principles of Xiangqi openings. In the first video last week, we have gone over some of the basic tenets of Xiangqi openings. In this video and the ensuing videos, we will be going through the technical aspects of this game. Now there were 13 points that were listed in the book, and I've listed them as shown here. The Grandmaster mentioned that we have to keep in mind the following points when playing the opening phase. The first would be always to consider the efficiency of the move, and never move the same piece too many times. Never recklessly advance material. Move the advisor elephant with caution. Never overly protect or fall in love with the pawns. Never give up tempi for material. Steer away from congested positions. Command the important intersections or lines. Be wary of the center or problems that might arise from inadequate control of the center of the board. Pay attention to spatial orientation. Pay attention to the order of the moves, and be sensitive enough to know when to attack and defend. Be wary of attempts to gain tempi by sacrificing pawns. Okay, now the first thing to note about would be to consider the efficiency of the moves. Now this concept may be a little bit abstract in certain situations. But we do not have to fret about anything. Let's go through the examples that the Grandmaster gave. Okay, in the first example, same direction cannons, file chariot, rank chariot, and usually at this point in time it would be advocated that P3 plus 1 or H plus 7 were played. However, R2 plus 4 to patrol the riverbank with the chariot is often seen in amateur or beginner play. Now, this is not considered to be a good move, and the biggest reason is because it is not efficient enough. Although it can be considered to be a relatively normal development of the pieces, but there is no specific target, no specific plan in mind when you play R2 equals to 4. So that is why it is not considered to be as efficient as playing P3 plus 1, whereby Red would not only be prepared to develop his horse, he would also have limited the development of Black's left horse. So in comparison, R2 plus 4 to patrol the riverbank would not be a good idea. Now in the ancient manuals, R2 plus 6 was also given, but there will be another issue which will be discussed later on. So in the first example, patrolling the riverbank with R2 plus 4 is not a good idea because it is not efficient enough. Of course, some people might argue that one Red will try to consolidate his position with R2 plus 4. However, this is usually frowned upon because Red would have the initiative, and since you were given the initiative and you decided to play the central cannons, it would be better for you to try to be aggressive and try to increase your advantage or initiative as Red. And conversely, it would be true for Black to try to adopt a defensive position initially if Red played the red central cannon. So this is a concept to be slowly learned or slowly experienced. Okay. In the second example, the Grandmaster used the central cannon with edge horse variation. Now this is considered to be an orthodox variation, and both players have played according to the book up till now. Now in this example, Black would choose to play P1 plus 1 to advance the pawn. On the surface it will seem to be okay because black will now have limited the movement of the red horse. However, if compared to p7 plus 1, p1 plus 1 would not be a good idea because p7 plus 1 will be more efficient in that black would not only be prepared to would have developed his horse, he would also have impeded the movement of the red horse. So in comparison, p1 plus 1 and p7 plus 1, this would be the better move to be played at this point in time. And the concept of efficiency would need some time to get used to. You have to play a lot of games to be able to appreciate the importance of making efficient moves over time. So now next to the second point. The second point that the Grandmaster mentioned was never to move the same piece too many times. For this, he gave an example of a commonly played variation in the 1960s and explained why the variation went out of fashion. So, central cannon, screen house defense, and red will attack from the central file. So far so good. Black would defend or consolidate their central file. And these were the moves that were given in the example. Now, as mentioned earlier, this variation was quite popular and commonly seen in the 1960s. However, at this point in time, although red would have gained 2 pawns, the development of his left chariot was not desirable. And black, on the other hand, would have managed to move all his major pieces, which is one of the basic tenets as mentioned in the previous video. And at this point in time, black would be considered to have seized the initiative from red, because no matter how the game carried on, we can see that at this point in time the red chariot had made 5 moves. There were 11 plies that were made by each player at this point in time, but red had already used up 5 plies for the red chariot and 2 plies for the central pawn, which will be easily annihilated. So this would be a significant loss in tempo, and black would have the advantage in this situation. So we shall go through the board again. So far so good. Okay, so far the red chariots, the moves that are made are okay. Still okay. And it is at this time that, before black had even tried to offer a trade-off chariots, red would move his chariot for the 3rd time. And since red had done so, black would be prepared to retreat his cannon and prepare to play c8 goes to 7 to attack the chariot, so forcing the black chariot to move for the 4th time. And black would consolidate and protect his pawn. Black would block the elephant from protecting the pawn. Black would develop his chariot, and this will be the 5th time that the chariot had moved. h3 plus 4, p5 plus 1, 2 times that the pawn will move, and which will be easily captured by the black pawn, and c8 plus 3. Hence, at this point in time, red had made too many moves with the red chariot. In the 3rd example, whereby the Grandmaster explained the concept of never to recklessly advance material, a pawn versus pawn opening was discussed. So p3 plus 1, pawn opening, pawn versus pawn, h2 plus 3, and at this point in time, black decided to charge his horse to the riverbank. Now, moving the horse to the riverbank so early in the opening phase is known as the trailblazer horse, or 先锋马 in Chinese. Now, this is usually not advocated because the horse would lack adequate protection, and there would be the remaining chariots or cannons would not be able to provide enough protection to shield the horse so early in the game. And compared to the cannon and chariot in the opening phase, the horse would not be such a great attacking piece, and that is why horses are usually used in the mid game or in the slightly later in the opening phase for attack, and usually the cannons and chariots are played first. So at this point in time, because black had chosen to play the trailblazer horse, red would threaten to capture the horse with this move. There were two variations that were given. In the first variation, h4 plus 3 was played. Now, h4 plus 3 would seem to be a good move because the black horse would now be threatening to capture the chariot at this point in time. However, black could counter with r6 plus 5 to threaten to capture the central pawn. This would force black to protect the central pawn, and because the pawn had moved earlier, black could try to attack the black horse, forcing the pawn to advance to protect the horse. Now, at this point in time, red will simply play c8 equals to 7, traverse the cannon, so that to attack the black pawn. Now, as can be seen, at this point in time, we shall backtrack a little bit. After r6 plus 5 was played, the black horse basically did not have any good intersections to move to. So out of the 8 intersections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All of these intersections will now be covered or protected by red. If the black horse tried to retreat to the second file for a change or for a trade of cannons, for example, red will gain material in this instance. So that is why in the first variation, h4 plus 3 was not advisable. So we shall backtrack a little bit. After threatening to capture the black horse, what would happen if instead of h4 plus 3, black tried to protect the horse with c2 plus 2? Now, playing this would allow the black cannon to play c8 equals to 4 to target the red chariot. So how would red counter? Red would simply counter with p7 plus 1 to sacrifice his pawn. If black captured the pawn, black will lose his horse and also place his cannon under attack. So black will try to play c8 equals to 4 as planned. However, at this point in time, black could simply play c8 equals to 6 to offer a trade of material. And if the black horse tried to advance, red would simply counter with c6 equals to 7, and this will result in a loss of material because now the chariot will be attacking the black cannon and the black horse cannot retreat anymore. So to protect the black cannon, usually perhaps a4 plus 5 will be played, and red will gain a cross riverbank pawn so early in the game, so red would have a big advantage. One might wonder if I'll backtrack a little bit. If when red tried to gain material with tried to offer a trade of cannons would it be possible for black to play h4 plus 6 to try to capture the red horse? Now this would not be a good move because red could counter with by capturing the advisor and threatening to capture the black chariot. So the black chariot would have to move away and it would be a trade of material, but at this point in time black would have lost an advisor and his formation or defensive configuration would be in disarray. So red will still have the advantage at this point in time. So a short review. Pawn versus pawn, and black would try to use the trailblazer horse, and this example would explain why charging the horse forward without adequate backup early in the game is not a good idea in Xiangqi, and is usually frowned upon. And the reasons given have been shown in the two variations. And the first variation, after r1 plus 6, the black horse to be trapped. In the second variation, if black tried to protect the horse, trade of material, and red would have the obvious advantage. And there were two more examples for this section. This example is very commonly seen in amateur play. Red would attack with the central cannon, same direction cannons, and red would capture the enemy central pawn. Now this is frowned upon for red usually. Now the reasons are because black would defend with an advisor, and at this point in time black would be prepared to play h8 plus 7 or h2 plus 3 depending on the situation on the board, and prepared to chase the cannon away. So the cannon would be forced to retreat to say c5 minus 2. So for example, so at this point in time, after 4 moves, red would have used 3 moves to move his solitary cannon. However, black on the other hand would have made say 4 moves each, and at this point in time black would have developed his chariot, his horse, and also solidified his central file. So black would have gained initiative, seized the initiative away from red because he had developed more pieces. So that is why it is usually frowned upon that in the same direction cannons to capture the enemy's central pawn. So although red would have gained a pawn in the exchange, the loss of tempi, as can be seen in this situation, will be too great to offset the gain of the pawn. So this is the second example that has been given in the book. In the third and last example for this section, the following moves were given: central cannon, screen horse defense. Now this is also commonly seen, although usually black would push p7 plus 1, but so far this is still considered to be an orthodox variation. Now the move that is move of discussion for this example would be red playing r2 plus 6 so early in the game. Now this is also frowned upon because at this point in time black could simply counter with c8 equals to 9. And now if red accepted the challenge, accepted the trade of chariots, it would be a very even situation which black can be satisfied with, and black would have black's initiative or first move initiative would have eroded away. So usually r2 equals to 3 would be played, and black would take the opportunity to retreat his cannon and play c9 equals to 7 on the next move to attack. Now because the black cannot advance the pawn, red's right flank will be very vulnerable to attack. Singaporean Grandmaster Wu Zhonghan had a video to explain this variation a few years ago. I think it's still searchable on YouTube, and I will paste the link in the section below. So this is in this example. Usually R2 plus 6 is not played. Usually Red will choose to play either P7 plus 1 or P3 plus 1 for one of either the two major variations in this opening system, and it would be much better than playing R2 plus 6 at this point in time. So the concept of efficiency or moving the same piece too many times is not is very important, and although one of the basic tenets would be to try to develop all your major pieces as early as possible, you have to develop the pieces as efficiently as possible and not recklessly advance material as suggested in this, as shown in this section. Okay. Now for the fourth section, the Grandmaster advised all players to move the advisor and elephant with caution in the opening phase. There were two examples given, and this was the first example. It can be considered to be a continuation of the previous board. Now, in this situation, it will be Red's turn to move. So Red would choose to play P7 plus 1 as to counter Black's P7 plus 1. Now, so far this is considered to be an orthodox move, and because P7 plus 1 was played in this variation, Black chose to adopt the left cannon blockade variation. Now this would apply pressure on Red's pawn rank and also decrease the amount of space that the Red chariot can move. Now, so far this is still considered to be orthodox. However, in this variation, Red will play A4 plus 5. Now, this move will be greatly frowned upon because it would hamper the development of the pieces on Red's left flank, and because Red had played A4 plus 5, Red's initiative would have been surrendered to Black, and it would be an even situation at this point in time. Now, it can be seen Red's right chariot would not be able to do much. The Red horse would also not be able to move or be developed, and it would take Red some effort to try to free his right flank. And coupled with the fact that the Red's left flank was still undeveloped, Black would have much space to move his pieces. It would be to Black's advantage at this point. Hence, the biggest flaw in this situation would be Red playing A4 plus 5. That is what is meant by the Grandmaster saying to move the advisor or elephants with great caution in the opening phase. In the second example and the last example in this video tutorial, the Grandmaster gave an example of central cannon versus sandwich horse defense opening variation. So central cannon, sandwich horse defense, and in this variation, Red chose to push P7 plus 1. Now it will be okay, and Black will counter with P7 plus 1, which will also be orthodox and one of the natural moves to make in this situation. However, at this point in time, Red chose to play A6 plus 5. Now this move would be greatly frowned upon again, because although playing A6 plus 5 was to prevent Red from was to discourage Black from playing C6 plus 5 to pin or skewer Red's eventual left proper horse. However, this move would still be inefficient, and it would actually allow Black to develop his pieces and sees the initiative from red. Hence, a6+5 is seldom or ever seen in professional play, and this is also one of the examples as to why moving either the advisor or elephant brashly in the opening phase is not a very good idea, and one to consolidate one's position is important, but it has to be done carefully. I hope you have enjoyed this week's video tutorial. There are still about 8 sections more to go, with many more examples. I'll try to do more videos over the next few weeks, and please bear in mind. Thank you. And if you like my video channel or the work that I've done, please subscribe. Thank you again, and have a nice week ahead.